I woke up thinking I was just going to check a fence line before sunrise, and by that afternoon I had a whole subdivision trapped behind a gate on my land. 50 brand new houses, a shiny Premier Community sign, and a homeowners association president screaming like I'd committed a felony. By the next day, the county was backed up with reporters, deputies, and residents demanding I open the road to a neighborhood that never should have existed. That morning started the way ranch mornings always do, quiet, cold, and honest. Frost was still turning the grass silver when I swung into the saddle and headed toward the south fence, coffee still warm and my gut breath coming out in little clouds. I wasn't hunting trouble. I was hunting broken posts from the cold snap. About a mile out, my gelding got twitchy ears up feet light, like he didn't like what the wind was carrying. Then I saw it. 12 feet of fence. Gone. Not snapped, not cut, just lifted out clean like someone peeled it away and thought nobody would notice. And the tracks, heavy commercial tires, rutted straight through my pasture like they owned the place. That fence line's been there longer than my truck has had a title, and anybody messing with it isn't confused. They're confident. I followed the tracks up toward the ridge, my stomach tightening with every step because the direction they were headed didn't make any sense unless somebody was doing something real stupid or real bold. When I crested the hill, I stopped so hard my horse bumped into me. Down in the valley where you're supposed to see sagebrush and cottonwoods, there was a suburb, not a couple trailers, not one rogue cabin. A full-on development, 50 matching houses, fresh sod sprinklers clicking like it was a Saturday cartoon. A metal sign caught the early light, Cedar Glen Estates, a premier HO, a community, and it sat right in the middle of Turner Ridge Ranch. Land my family has never sold, never leased, never even talked about letting go. There were kids on scooters, a guy dragging a trash bin to the curb like he'd done it for years, a woman unloading groceries like the valley had always been a neighborhood and not my grazing ground. I rode straight down and up close. It looked even more fake. Landscaping that still had nursery tags half hidden in the mulch. Driveways so new the concrete edges were still pale. Not a single tree older than a weekend. Then the welcoming committee rolled up on a golf cart like she was patrolling a resort. She wore a red blazer that looked like it had never met dust in its life, sunglasses perched like a weapon. "Sir," she said sharp and loud, "you're not allowed on HOA property. Residents only." I stared at her for a second because the audacity was almost funny. "This isn't HOA property," I said. "This is my ranch." She blinked like her brain had to reboot. "I'm Melissa Hart," she snapped, "Homeowners Association President. You are trespassing." "Jake Turner," I said. "Owner of this land since before your board had a website." And I pointed my chin at the sign like it was a bad joke. "You put this on my dirt." She laughed, actually laughed, and waved at the hills like my whole life was a misunderstanding. "Your ranch is out there somewhere," she said. "This is Cedar Glen now. It's legal. The county has the records." Right on cue, her sidekick stepped in. Slick suit, polished shoes that didn't belong within 10 miles of manure, a binder tucked under his arm like it was Holy Scripture. "Chad Reynolds," he said, not even offering a hand. "HOA Vice President. All transfers were handled correctly." "You must be mistaken." "Mistaken," I repeated, tasting it like something rotten. "Show me the deed," I said. "Show me one page with my signature." He didn't open the binder. He didn't show me anything. He just smiled like I was an inconvenience they'd already rehearsed for. The cranky rancher, the predictable obstacle, the guy they'd talk over until he went away. Melissa leaned closer. "You'll be hearing from our attorneys," she said like she was doing me a favor. "Perfect," I told her. "I'll be ready." I rode back home with my jaw locked so tight my teeth hurt. I wasn't thinking about lawsuits yet. I was thinking about how 50 houses don't appear overnight without somebody somewhere moving mountains of paperwork. And if the county had the records, then either the county was asleep at the wheel or somebody greased it. At my kitchen table, I pulled out the map cabinet my dad treated like a vault. Surveys, boundary descriptions, old plats with stamps and signatures that smelled like history. I photographed everything and called Lauren Briggs, the toughest land rights attorney I know, and the kind of woman who reads legal language like it's plain English. She answered on the second ring. I told her what I saw, and there was a pause on the line that made my stomach drop. "Jake," she said, "tell me you're messing with me." I wish I said. I'm looking at their mailboxes right now. She was at my place in 30 minutes. No small talk, no polite smile. She spread my documents out, then pulled up the county's online parcel map on her laptop. Cedar Glen showed up on the overlay like it belonged, but when she peeled back the layers, my ranch was sitting right underneath it, like a buried truth. "This is drawn over your land," she said, "not transferred, not approved, just drawn." Then she started spotting weirdness. Missing approvals, permit stamps tied to a planner who'd retired, parcel numbers that didn't match any real lot history. The paper trail looked like it was built fast by someone who thought nobody would scrutinize it. That night an email hit my inbox. Subject line: Notice of Violations, Unauthorized Entry, from the HOA. I laughed once, short humorless, because it wasn't about a violation, it was about control. They were building a record trying to paint me as the aggressor before I could prove they were standing on stolen ground. By the next morning, I had letters taped to my gate flyers under my windshield and a neighbor texting me a photo from inside Cedar Glen report sightings of Jake Turner. Do not engage. That one got to me not in some dramatic movie way, but in the real grinding way that makes your shoulders feel heavy. Because those residents weren't my enemy. Most of them looked like normal people who'd bought a house and thought the county paperwork meant something. For a minute, sitting on my porch with coffee gone cold, I stared out at my own land and felt the weight of it. 50 families, a county map that said one thing, a HOA acting like they were the law, and me, one guy in boots, watching my name get turned into a warning label. I didn't spiral into some philosophical crisis. I did something more practical. I asked one question that mattered. What if they actually did file something that sticks? Not because I believed Melissa, because I needed to know exactly what I was fighting. Lauren didn't let me sit in it. "We go to the recorder's office," she said. "We pull the real file." At the county recorder's office, a clerk named Tessa Miller met us like she'd been waiting for this story her whole career. She pulled the Cedar Glen folder and flipped the first page toward us. "It's wrong," she said immediately. She tapped a parcel number. "This doesn't exist in our system. It's a phantom." She pointed at permits. These were filed under a planner's name after he retired. Then she scrolled to a map and traced a line with her finger. And the best part, she said, flat as a hammer. "The only access road into Cedar Glen runs dead center across your property. No easement, no right-of-way." Oh. Lauren looked at me and I felt the whole thing click into place. 50 houses, and not one had legal access. "I own that road, the only way in or out." When we got back to the ranch, HOA contractors were already there trying to install a gate on that access road like they were claiming it. I walked right up and asked, calm as I could manage, "Who gave you permission?" One of them shrugged. "HOA president," he said. "On my land," I replied and pulled out my phone. Sheriff Frank Doyle showed up faster than I expected. He took one look at Lauren's paperwork, then looked at the contractors. "This road belongs to Jake Turner," he said. "You're trespassing. Pack it up." Melissa and Chad arrived in a hurry, acting offended that law enforcement existed. Melissa launched into a speech about community safety and authorized improvements. Chad tried the binder thing again, holding it like a shield. Sheriff Doyle didn't blink. "Show me an easement," he said, "or you're done here." They retreated, but I could see it on their faces, fear buried under arrogance. Because the bluff only works when nobody calls it. That's when the HOA went nuclear. More notices, more threats, a social media post that implied I was endangering children by controlling access on my own property, and news crews sniffing around like they'd found a perfect little villain story. Then a guy from inside Cedar Glen walked up my driveway late afternoon. Mid-30s, tired eyes, hands shoved in his pockets like he didn't want trouble. "I'm Miguel Santos," he said quietly. "Lot 14. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just exhaled and said, "People are scared. The board told us this was all clean, but things don't add up." He handed me a printout, internal emails he'd gotten copied on by accident. Melissa and Chad talking about pushing filings through and retroactive signatures like it was normal business, like the residents were props. That was all I needed. Not to punish the families, just to stop the board from dragging this out until someone buried the truth under delays and noise. So I used the one leverage point that was completely legal and completely undeniable. At dawn, I called Hank the welder. We set a heavy steel gate right where that access road crossed my property line. We anchored it deep, hung it true, locked it tight, and posted signs that didn't ask permission. Private property. No easement, do not cross. By sunset, there were cars lined up on the inside, residents confused, some angry, some just stunned. Melissa showed up in her golf cart red blazer, blazing like a stop sign, screaming about public access and emergency routes, and you can't do this. I leaned on the fence post and kept my voice low. It's private land, I said. If you want to cross it, bring an easement. Sheriff Doyle rolled in again, took a careful look, then faced the crowd. He's within his rights, he said. There is no legal access recorded here. You could feel the shift. It wasn't the residents staring at me anymore. It was them turning toward Melissa like they were finally seeing the person who'd been talking over them since day one. Court moved fast once the evidence landed on the right desk. Lauren laid it out clean. Real surveys, forged filings, missing approvals. Phantom parcels permits tied to people who weren't even employed. Miguel's emails. Tessa's confirmations, the missing easement that should have been the first thing anyone checked. Judge Caldwell didn't tolerate theater. He listened, asked a few sharp questions, and then he ruled like he'd been waiting to say it. All HOA claims dismissed. Board leadership suspended. Fraud investigation ordered. Access road declared mine. Melissa's face went blank. No speech, no threat, no red blazer power left to swing around. Chad finally opened that binder like it mattered, then closed it again because paper doesn't save you when the truth is stamped signed and staring back. And as they stood there, finally out of moves, I realized something simple: maps don't lie. But people sure will if they think you won't draw a hard line.